you listen to podcasts that sound like this? Hey, welcome back to the Super OK Podcast, where our audio sounds mediocre.
Or do you prefer podcasts that sound more like this? Crisp, clear, fun, easy to listen to, and full of awesomeness? Well, then you should check out Spoiler Country, hosted exclusively over at Spoilerverse.com.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Bridging the Geekdoms. I'm your host, Robert Slavinsky, and do I got a show for you today? Last week, I got a chance to sit down and talk with Kurt Sasso from Two Geeks Talking. It was an amazing conversation talking about his journey from not podcasting to being somebody who podcasts for the last 12 years. It is an incredible story and journey, so please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Two Geeks Talking with me. Welcome. And I know that this is something that we've been working on and discussing for a number of weeks here, trying to get you on. And with my equipment all screwed up and my internet not being great, it's just it's been a complete headache doing this. But thank you so much.
No, I really appreciate you taking the time to interview me. It's been a while since I've been interviewed, so I'll shake off the rust as much as I can.
Great. Now, I don't know too much about you. There was a bit of an intriguing aspect to coming and doing this interview with you, because when we talked, I know that my friend John from Spoiler Country, he said, oh, he's a really cool guy to talk with. You should definitely get him on your show. And I was like, okay. So I start looking stuff up, and all I see is your show. Like, that's it. Like, there's nothing else about you out there. So
I'm kind of surprised, but okay.
And I was watching bits and pieces of different interviews that you had, and the one thing that I do want to say right off the bat is just how impressed I am with your presentation of your interviews and how you go forth talking with the guest and really diving into just everything about them. That's really hard to find when it comes to a good interview podcast or YouTube show or whatever. A lot of times people just focus on one little thing and they're like, oh, you were in this movie, or oh, you made this song, and they just stick to that one thing and they don't really dive into everything. So before we kind of dive into all the intricacies of that, how did you get into being an entertainment interviewer?
Well, I'm going to say this right off the bat. I am an introvert converted to an extrovert. And I say that because when I started the show back in 2008, Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview creative people in the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. So it's a broad range of geekdom that I talk about. But when I first started back in 2008, I was helping create a webcomics database and list with a good friend of mine, Phil Frump. And I said to him, you know what? We have all these amazing webcomic creators that are out there. I would really love to interview them on a podcast. And he's like, go ahead. So forcing an introvert to be an extrovert to become a podcaster was really a big step in my creative journey. But when I started doing all of this stuff, I didn't know what questions I wanted to ask. I didn't know who I was going to get on the show. It was just a wing and a prayer. Hey, let's try to get these people on. It evolved from there. It was actually TGT Webcomics was the very first show. TGT Media is the kind of overall brand of what I do. And Two Geeks Talking is what everything evolved into, for at least for the interview side of things. So I really thought that as we started doing this, and 1,000+ interviews in 12 years is nothing to sneeze at, but it still staggers my mind as to thinking I've done 1,000 interviews with so many amazing creative people, and I don't know if the world even knows anything about the show or about myself, for that matter.
You mentioned 1,000+ interviews, which is absolutely insane to me. And I'm starting on the whole interview journey myself. I've dabbled in it in the past. I've more so when it was just the audio podcast side. I would reach out to some of my friends at other podcasts, and I talked to a couple cosplayers. That was a lot of fun, but there's so much work that goes into the whole interview process. And to think that you've gone through 1,000+ of those, it's just absolutely baffling to me. And I commend you for it. It's a lot of work, but what would you say has been the most challenging aspect of putting a show on like that on a consistent basis?
Burnout. That's the main thing, burnout. For a good number of years, from 2008 to 2012, I was doing 2+ hour interviews, audio interviews, and then I'd go to comic conventions and I would do 15-minute interviews with celebrities and other people at those conventions. I'm only one person. You understand this as well. I've seen your work, but I'm only one person that does all the editing, the marketing, the social media, everything like that. And so there was a time where, I'm going to say 2016 or whatever, I went back to school between 2013 2016 for a double major in visual arts and film. And I was still doing the show then, and I got burnt out by 2017. I put too much of myself out there. I was stretching myself thin. Health started to go down, a lot of other minor things. But I really found that I needed a break from the show. So I took about a year off. I did sporadic interviews here or there. And then I came back to it more recently in about 2018 or so. And so go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, when you talk about being burnt out, I completely understand that. My show with my co-host Colton, we started back in early 2017, and we went strong. I mean, we were doing 1, 2, sometimes 3 shows a week nonstop for 2.5 years. And we got to a point where we just were like, all right, we're kind of burnt out, and we both stopped for about a year. Maybe I was a little less than a year that we stopped, because John pulled me in from Spoiler Country. He pulled me in, like, we want Star Wars content, do Star Wars. So he pulled me back into creating everything and doing a podcast. But it's one of those things, you just get so burnt out, and you get stuck in this lull where you want to continue, but you just don't know if you can, if you want to. And I've actually hit that wall a couple times. Luckily, the second time it happened, it only lasted about a month, if that. But you hit that, and you're just, I think for me, I don't know for you, but you don't see progression. You're doing the same thing over and over and over again, and you're hoping that people are going to start listening or watching or following, and you're not seeing it happen. You're not seeing your show grow. And you get to that point where is it even worth it anymore? Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun, but I'm having fun talking to a monitor or to a wall. Like, there's nothing, there's no substance there that's getting out. And to me, that I agree, being burnt out is one of the most difficult challenges. How did you completely overcome that, though?
I think for me, 2020 was kind of, 2019, I kind of became a little more serious with getting back into it. I had done vacation every couple of months, and I found a bit of a rhythm. I found some new questions to ask. I started going more introspective with the people rather than focusing in on just the current project that they were doing. I mean, that's still part of the show, don't get me wrong, but I try not to rely on past, as you mentioned previously in the interview. Yes, the past is great. Whoever they are, they've made amazing accomplishments in their life, but let's focus on the here and now and maybe touch upon what they did to get to where they are now. And so from an introspective perspective, I found that, especially talking with a lot of just comic creators in general, seeing their mindsets, seeing how creative they are with their characters, with their worlds, with everything else like that, just gave me a little more boost of energy. And you need content in order to go to comic conventions as well, too, as press. And that's the other thing. And there was a good span between, besides the pandemic, between 2018 on, I haven't been to a comic convention, at least as press, only because my content wasn't up to their standards, or the amount of content I wasn't putting out was not there. So when I was doing, say, 8 interviews in a year, oh no, sorry, we're not going to give you press pass. Okay, understandable, I get that. So I have to up my game. I have to now start putting out content. I just now start putting out interviews on a weekly basis. I now have to start getting a queue going. I now have to start actively finding guests on the show and being a little more proactive rather than what I'm doing. And so that gave me more energy to start getting back into the swing of things and finding a reinvigoration that I desperately needed, plain and simple. I mean, I have a queue. I've never had a queue in 12 years. I've always been week to week, and I would always edit it in that same week, and I would always release it in that same week. And now I have a backlog. I have 12 plus interviews in the scheduled, and I have maybe 3 that I have to edit. So
Jeez.
I have a lot to do.
Yeah. Well, you go and you get burnout, you find yourself in this place, you then kind of give yourself new goals. You give yourself just kind of a resurgence of sorts, and you start pushing forward. And again, I can completely relate to that in a way, because, as I said, we took a year off, I came back, and then for me, you're saying how the comic convention thing they weren't, for them, your stuff wasn't up to snuff. So you had to adjust, you had to change. And it seems like that gave you a bit of a resurgence there. For me, it was the confidence that John and Spoiler Country put in me, like, oh, look, we want you to do this. And that kind of gave me a boost of excitement, energy, and really pushed me forward. And I can't thank them enough for what they've done over the past, what has it been now, 2 years since they did that. I've at least experienced that you still hit those points, and you're sitting here saying, oh, I have all this backlog and all this. That can get overwhelming. And as you said, you're the one that does it all. You interview, you schedule, you edit, you produce, you do all that. It kind of gets overwhelming. Isn't there ever a moment for you where you're just, I can't, I can't do it anymore?
Sometimes I look, I'm not going to say that I haven't done interviews a couple of months ago that I really should have edited by now, but I've done interviews a couple of months ago that I should have edited by now. It is what it is, but they're there. And then other interviews crop up where, hey, I have a Kickstarter, I have to get it out by this date, and so I have to start rearranging schedules and things like that. So as much as I really hate pushing past interviews down in the queue in order to get other interviews forward, even if I don't think that they're going to be beneficial. I'm doing it because it's a professional courtesy more than anything. And I really think that when you take time to do interviews like this, you're looking to get it promoted. You're looking to have that person say, yes, I was on this show to promote my talking about my current project. Some people, it doesn't happen. There are some guests where I've given them the information, and they have not, other than a simple retweet, they have not actively shared it. And that to me feels like a kick in the balls, pardon the expression. Like, plain and simple. It's like, you took the time to schedule yourself with the show, and I'm eternally grateful for that. You're here promoting your product and yourself, which that's the basis of Two Geeks Talking, promotion of yourself. If you're not able to promote yourself, that's why you're on the show. That's why I actively look for people that are brand new to their industry or seasoned professionals. I want to give everyone that chance, not only to showcase themselves, but to also showcase the talent that they have, and maybe share some nuggets of wisdom to those that are listening and watching to the show itself. But when I get people that actively do not showcase their own interview, it makes me a little gun shy in the sense that I don't want to necessarily have them back on, because are they going to promote this one? If you're not taking the time if you're taking the time to promote yourself on multiple interview shows, and you're selective in what you're doing as to who you're promoting, then I'd rather have someone that's hungry for the interview to come on the show.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I completely mind blanked on your question.
No, that's perfectly fine, because we're kind of diving into a little bit of the mindset behind doing what you do, and whether it's being an entertainment interviewer, or if you're somebody who just wants to podcast with a couple of friends and just talk about movies or sports. There's that whole aspect of marketing. And that is a difficult aspect within this little, I don't know what we want to call it, because it's not it is a hobby for some, but to others, this is something that you love doing. And for me, I don't consider it a hobby. I know it is. I know my fiance would say, oh, it's your hobby, but until you start making money from it, it's a hobby. I love doing it. And there's that whole aspect of when you're talking to people, when you're interviewing these people who are making comics, making music, making movies, they should take pride in their work enough that they're going to help showcase themselves. And with you, they went to you, they talked to you to promote their content. Now they have to promote that so they can promote their content.
Now, so I just want to put a caveat on this and what I previously said, though. This is not everyone. 99.9999 infinity% promote the heck out of what they do because they're very passionate and they love, they're thankful and everything like that. And like I said, I appreciate them. It's the occasional one or two people that I've had on in the past, and they want to come back on. And it's like, I want to have you on, but I want you to market yourself as well. I've not been monetized since 2000 and whenever they shut it off, 2016 on YouTube. Mm-hmm. That's gone. I have 450 something subscribers in 12 years. I've done 1,000+ interviews. Is that my fault for not promoting it? Or is that the algorithm that's constantly against me right now? I'm one of 7 billion people that are doing content like this.
Yeah.
Roughly. And there's frustration. There's, why am I doing this? So back to the whole thing of the burnout factor as well. Why am I doing this? Am I making money on this? No, I haven't made money on this in forever. I think I made $10 at one point. But I've had podcasts, I've had video interviews, I've done both at the same time. I've released that type of content continuously. I've promoted on multiple social media platforms. And so I love that these next 12 or so people that I have currently as of this interview are clamoring to be on the show, to talk about themselves, to interview about themselves. That makes me excited. That's what keeps me going. If someone's passionate about their work, even if it's their first time doing an interview, I love the fact that they're willing to take that chance.
Oh yeah, you're not wrong. And again, I apologize if it came across like I was saying all of the people you interview, because I know it's not. I see it on our network, on the Spoilerverse network. I see that there, and I've had long discussions with the guys over on the network. Like, look, you got to release an episode, you got to promote it. You have to promote that episode, whether it's for a week, 3 days, whatever. You can't just put one post out and be done with it. You can't tweet one time and say, hey, we talked to this guy, see ya. But then you have to show your passion. You have to show your excitement for what you're doing, because those people who come on your show, and I'm not saying you, I'm just saying in general for everybody, they want to see that, because that might help them get just as excited about their own stuff, because they're seeing fans excited. And that's what I try to tell people all the time when it comes to doing anything like this, is you have to lead with excitement. You have to, if you're not going to be passionate about it, nobody is going to want to watch. Nobody's going to want to listen. Nobody's going to want to be on the show. You have to be passionate. And I can tell. And again, I obviously haven't watched all 1,000 interviews that you've done, but I was going through them over the last couple of weeks, and I can tell that passion with you. And I can tell that is why you're getting people on the show. That is why people are willing to talk to you, because of the passion and the excitement that you bring. And what is it for you? Because you talk, again, just like my channel, we talk about a lot of everything: video games, comics, movies, everything. How do you stay so excited about talking about all that and talking to these creators about all of it?
Well, I think for me, it comes down to, I don't know who these people are, plain and simple, until I do my research. I don't know who my next guest is unless they've actively been on the show in the past. I have no idea who I'm talking with. They are a blank slate to me. They could be extremely famous. They could be brand new to the industry, but that's my excitement level. I don't know absolutely anything about these people other than what they are currently trying to talk about. And so the excitement for me is talking about their work, talking about themselves, looking at what they've done in the past, looking at their social media, a variety of other things, if they've been on other interviews, seeing if they're maybe more introverted than extroverted. You kind of get a sense of that when you're talking to certain people. And how can I make them comfortable on the show? How can I make sure that when they're talking about themselves, are they nervous? So I'll talk with them 5 minutes or so before the show, get a good feel for what they're like. But literally, I have no idea who these people are unless I either actively search for them and get them on the show, or they've been on the show in the past. So it's not that I want to not know anything about them. It's just that I don't know anything about them, which is why I have to do my investigation and my research. And that's why I love new people. That's why I love these, whether they're movie stars or whether they're comic creators or whatever. It's just, I love the fact that they're doing something with their life that's creative, and not a lot of people can say that.
Yeah.
So we as interviewers, this is a creative endeavor. This is a professional job, hobby or not. It doesn't matter if you're getting paid or not. You're still taking the time to be a professional interviewer. And so if you come across that, if you're genuine in how you talk to people and how you ask questions and how you engage with them, it's going to show in your interviews, and it's going to make them more comfortable and maybe get them back on in the next time they do something else.
What's going on, everyone? Are you still looking for that perfect one-stop shop for all things pop culture? That one place where you can hear hot takes about superheroes, Star Wars, video games, and more? Well, fear not. Bridging the Geekdoms is the place for you. A podcast that focuses on the current rumors, scoops, and controversies within the pop culture world. Hosted exclusively on the Spoilerverse network, you can find us on any one of your favorite podcatching apps, YouTube, and at Spoilerverse.com. So don't miss out on the excitement. Find us and subscribe now. So, 12 years, long time.
Yes.
What would you say were your goals starting out? When you started, what were your goals, and have they changed to now? Like, are you looking at, this is the ultimate prize. This is the person I want to interview most, or anything like that?
Well, they're dead, so I can't do that. Stanley was my ultimate goal.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I have a documentary I've been putting together for the past 10 years or so called Little Person Amongst Media Giants. And my last 4 questions on every interview dives into the mindset of creative people, whether they're in the entertainment industry or whatever. And so my last 4 questions are very broad. They're very generic, but it's about success and failure in your own personal life and professional life. And so I wanted to interview people like a Stanley and see other creators, whether they're brand new to the industry or whether they're a seasoned professional. I wanted to know what makes you tick. Why are you so passionate about what you do? Are you successful? What do you think of failure? A variety of other things, et cetera, et cetera. And comic conventions were the best way to do that because it's a face-to-face interview. You have 5 minutes to talk with these people. You don't want to gum up their queue or anything like that. You want to be cognizant of they're there to sell. So quick interviews, quick questions, put this all together, put it into your documentary. It's still ongoing. But my goals in life were, when I first started, was I want to do 100 interviews. It doesn't matter how long it takes. I want to do 100 interviews. And then I want to do 200. And I want to do 5. I want to do 10. I want to do 1,000. I've hit that goal. Let's do the next 100. Doesn't matter how long it takes. Could be a year, could be 6 months, could be 3 months, whatever. I want to make sure that I keep pushing myself to the next goal. And success and failure resides in myself, plain and simple. I'm the only one doing this, so I'm the only one that can fail. I'm the only one that can not edit an interview. I'm the only one that can't get a guest for the show. it's all on me. So realistically, here's for the next 100.
I'm sitting here listening to your answer, and I'm like, I'm looking at my next question. I'm like, man, he kind of ruined my next question a little bit, but I'm still going to ask it. You were sitting there talking about your goals and just get 100, get 200, get 500,000. And you're talking about how when it comes to success, you're the factor in that. You're the one who can create the success or not. But let's just say today your show ended, done, no more. What is the one accomplishment? And you can't say how many episodes you did. What is the one accomplishment from this adventure that you've had that you can hang your hat on? You can just take comfort in and say, it was all worth it because of this.
The fact that I did this with very little help. I've had, and let me phrase this properly. I've had co-hosts in the past. I've had about 60 co-hosts, I think.
Wow.
Just in general. I had one main, I had one main co-host for the first 60 episodes, Phil. And if it wasn't for him, this show wouldn't have gotten started. But if more recently, I think any of my Comic-Con interviews that I've had at my very last convention. I mean, I was brought into a media roundtable a couple years back for a variety of different sci-fi shows, Lost Girl and Defiance, a bunch of others. And then I got face-to-face time, and that some of them remembered me from past interviews was kind of a cool thing. It's like, hey, how you doing? Or they're signing autographs at a table at a booth, and they see me and they wave type deal or whatever. It's just like, cool. I remember that person went. So the interactions would be the best thing I could say.
Yeah, that's a great answer, and that's kind of what you would want to be the answer whenever you're doing what you do. I mean, for me, if we take a look at what I've done with my show, if my accomplishment would be that I just had a lot of fun. I could sit there and say, I had a lot of fun doing this. I've talked with some cool people. I've made some great friends. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, has been more important than seeing the view tick go up or the subscriber ticks go up. And yeah, I did say a little bit ago that can be a little debilitating whenever you don't see that stuff going up and you getting the views. But that's always just a small fraction of it. As I sit here, Twitter is a hellscape. It's one of those things, like it is a when you do this kind of stuff, you need to use Twitter. And it's unfortunate because Twitter can be so annoying from time to time. And I'm just going to be honest with you. And I stayed away from it. The first 3 years of our show, I stayed away from it. I did not start utilizing Twitter on a regular basis until last June 2020, right when the pandemic started. And the friendships that I actually made on there, the connections that I've made have brought me so much more enjoyment out of doing this than pretty much ever seeing that subscriber count go up or the view counts go up or anything like that. And to your point, it's just the interaction, just getting the chance to meet, talk to, and have these conversations with people that are interesting. That's really the best way to put it. So I like your answer, and I'm stealing your answer.
Well, and here's the thing: 90% of my interviews are from Twitter. Okay. Like, if I didn't set up my Twitter account, I would be emailing people directly. And 10 years ago or so, it was a lot easier to email people because they actively looked at email.
Yeah, not anymore.
No, because as soon as you see anything that's not, a job offer, or if you don't know that person, it's
pretty much ignore it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like spam.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I want to get into you a little bit more, and sure. I wanted to do that in the beginning. But you, like, where do you come from? Like, what drew you to doing this? What was it? You talk about movies, comics, television, all that stuff, but growing up, was that what you were into, or just that kind of thing? Like, what got you to that point?
Look, I'm a geek, plain and simple. I mean, I don't think I'd have the name of my show as Geek if I wasn't a geek. So funny thing, back in high school, way back when, I won't say the year, is when I got into, I'll tell you how big of a geek I am. and see if you can place me. So the high school cliques, the traditional high school cliques, the jocks, the nerds, the band people, theater, etc. So I was not only in the computer science club, I was also in the music program, and I was also in football. So where could you categorize me?
I have no idea.
Exactly. They couldn't think of it either. So long story short, early age. So cartoons, Hanna-Barbera, 80s, 90s cartoons is how it all got started. Polka Dot Door, Sesame Street, Smurfs, Gummy Bears, Eek the Cat, you name a cartoon from the 80s, late 70s, early 80s to today, I've probably watched it. Sci-fi, Highlander and Star Wars were my two biggest things. Love Star Trek as well, but I'm more of a Star Wars thing. Nothing beats the opening, ships coming in with John Williams music, with the whole thing. It's just, you can't beat that. Music wise, I was, like I said, I was in band. I played clarinet. My mother got me into clarinet because she played. So, listening to orchestral scores, Jurassic Park, everything.
I kind of want to cut you off here, but I mean, I don't know your age, but you and I
take a guess. I'm curious.
38-ish.
Oh, thank you. No, 41, 42.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Not too bad then. You're not much older than me, but it's really interesting because your journey sounds very similar to my journey. Just now, again, you're what, 6 years older than me, 7 years older than me. So my cartoons were a little different. I did watch Hanna-Barbera, but they were in rerun. And I mean, they were probably in reruns for you too, but it was on the Cartoon Network and stuff like that. It was, yeah. And it was, a lot of it was reruns. The newer cartoons, the 90s cartoons are what I was more into though.
Oh yeah.
But the band, I was in band. I was an art student more than a computer. We didn't really have a computer class in my high school. Otherwise, I would have been in that. But I was very much an art student as well. I was in every art class. I took every one that I could. So I was in band, art, and I played rugby. I was a jock in a way playing rugby. So it's really interesting to hear you're talking about all this stuff. Then you talk about Star Wars. Then you talk about your love for orchestral music. And let me tell you, that was me growing up. Is my mom actually, it was between junior and senior year, and I was going to the prom my junior year, and we had it at I live right outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we had it in the orchestral hall. It's called Heinz Hall there.
Nice.
And that's where our prom was. And I get out of the limo and I kind of look up, and there's a poster for an upcoming show with John Williams composing the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra.
Oh, that would have been awesome.
And I was like, that is cool. I can't miss that. So I go home and my mom goes, I'm like, what? She's like, I got tickets for us to go. I was like, no way. So my mom, like, that's kind of mom she was. So she got tickets and I got to go see John Williams compose the orchestra live. It was phenomenal. But that's kind of the kid I was so into, that the music scores from films. Film scores were just everything to me. And even today,
still are,
yeah. You look at my Spotify and it's just Hans Zimmer, John Williams, Kevin Kiner. Yeah, it just goes on. So many different
anime music as well for me is too, because that's how I got into anime as well. Was ironically, Sailor Moon was my very first anime I watched. Go figure, because I was trying to date the girl that was watching it. But
that's funny.
But speaking of Star Wars and the orchestra, so the local symphony orchestra here in Windsor, Ontario, had a contest, and I had actually got tickets to sit on stage while they were playing. And so there's another show that's in this area as well. We have a minor rivalry, but we're friends. And so he does a comic show, and I do Two Geeks Talking. And so we were on opposite tables against each other. So I basically listened to everything John Williams for Star Wars from episode 1 to like episode 7 at the time. Our team won. Hats off to that.
You were talking about all of your growing up and being into all of the geekiness that a typical geek should be into. How did that lead you to getting to doing a show? Like, Where does that idea come?
It's just because of the website database for web comics. So literally so I was playing WoW with Phil, and he said, well, do you like web comics? And I said, yeah, I love web comics, but I've only read a few, and Penny Arcade was the big thing, and Control Delete and all those other stuff. And he's like, well, I have a web comics list. And so he sent me his list, and it's 4,000 web comics at the time in the late 90s. Sorry, I should say mid 90s. 4,000 web comics is huge. So I got this huge list. And so he started putting together an SQL database of all these web comics so that you could just search a directory. And that's when I said to him, hey, we should interview these webcomic people. And so episode 10, we had Phil Folio from Girl Genius Online, or Girl Genius, I should say. Him and Kaja Folio are longtime comic creators of an amazing webcomic, and they still do it in the traditional sense. And they also did Magic the Gathering cards and all that other stuff as well, too. So that was a cool segue. But episode 10 was like, this is the first time I had ever talked to anyone famous. So that to me that blew my mind. It was huge. It was like, oh my God, I'm talking to a celebrity in webcomics. This is awesome. A couple of years later, by 2010, 2010 is when I went to my very first comic convention in Chicago at C2E2. And I got to interview the Scott Kurtz and Chris Straub and Dave Kellett and Jill Thompson, who did Sandman, and a bunch of others. Like I did 80 plus interviews in a 3-day span, and they were 15-minute interviews each. So I was literally editing it for days after that. But if it wasn't for webcomics, I wouldn't have done this show. If it wasn't for looking at that list of 4,000 plus webcomics, I wouldn't have had the idea to interview them. And if it wasn't for Phil, I wouldn't have gotten that list, and I wouldn't have had him as an amazing co-host to guide me, at least initially, to how to approach people and how to talk to people and how to be more extroverted than both of us actually are. So
yeah, that's I love hearing the stories of people how they break in. Like, what was that moment where you're just like, hey, this is a great idea, let's do something like that. And sometimes it's just as simple as you saw a list of all these comics and you're just like, hey, let's do this. And to me, I would never have thought of that. I would have just looked at those comics, be like, hey, I'm going to go over here and read some of them. I'm going to go. That's all I would have thought of. I wouldn't have thought like, okay, there's something here. We can make something of this. And even if it's just for our own enjoyment, let's go do this. That's not anything I would have ever thought of. So that's really, really cool how you just something that small, just
simple. Yeah,
something that small and simple. One thing I do like to ask a lot of people is, what would you recommend? So if a guy came up to you on the street and is just like, look, I love your show, I would love to do something like that, but how do I do it? What should I do? What do you recommend for people to get into, even if it's not interviewing, even if it's just simply sitting down and doing a podcast? What do you recommend, and how do you tell people to go about it?
When I started doing this in 2008, I literally had no idea what I was doing. Literally.
To be fair, nobody in 2008 knew what they were doing when it came to this stuff. So
right. So when I started, Mark Maron had just started his podcast with WTF. A bunch of other celebrities had just started their own podcasts. So I started around the same time as them. I had no idea. I didn't have a following. I didn't have anyone backing me. I didn't have cash. I didn't have anything like that. I just found the cheapest way possible to start a podcast, which at the time was TalkShoe, used Skype, and called into it and had them call into the show. And that's how I started the first episode.
I think I used that. So not to cut you off and that, but back around 2012-ish, maybe 2011, I was between jobs, and I'm a huge fan of hockey. Absolutely big fan. And luckily for me, I'm from Pittsburgh, so I've gotten to witness some amazing players come through Pittsburgh. But
yeah, you got lucky with Crosby. I'm just saying.
You're
Red Wings.
You're a Red Wings fan, really?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, no matter. Look. Okay. So
a little off topic, but sure.
Yeah. So when Tiger Stadium was still around, my dad took me to my first Tiger games. And so in 93 or 4, when Ken Griffey Jr. was still playing, he hit a homer to right field, and I nearly caught it. It dropped, and it skirted off, and someone else picked it up. A year later on ESPN, when they were talking about the strike, they showed Ken Griffey hit that home run, and me and my dad were up on ESPN. So no matter how bad the Detroit teams suck, I've always rooted for them. Yes, I know I'm Canadian. That's beside the point.
That was kind of my,
Every other person in my family, for the most part, not all of them, but about half, are Toronto fans. I mean, I feel for them because of the maple loaves, but that's beside the point. Anyway, sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. I actually got into a up-and-coming website, which is since closed down, but I was the beat writer for the Penguins for that website.
Oh, awesome.
So much so that I got to go to Penguin games and sit in the press box for free. It was a dream come true for a hockey fan, and I wanted to take that experience and do a show. And I think that what you were talking about there, that program where you call in, I think that I tried using that at that time, and that's the whole thing. Yeah,
the worst audio quality whatsoever.
Oh, it was bad.
I mean, it was like 64 hertz for the audio. It was just, it was so bad that I had to upsample it to try to get it to 128. It was just, and it was mono too, so I had to make it a stereo, and it was just so bad. Jay can tell you stories about. He was on the show way back when as well for his other shows, and it was, it was just so painful. But it worked. It was the cheap alternative. It was free, and then they wiped my entire archive. And so, that was fun. Luckily, I still have a physical backup. But at the time, 700 plus interviews by 2016 were wiped. Like, they didn't give me any heads up. They didn't give me any warnings. They just wiped everything. And it was just like, oh, but you can come back. Oh, but there's a cost. Jeez. Oh, but there's a limit to how much you can upload every month. Oh, there's this and this and this. Okay. I won't be back. That's why I've been reluctant to re-uploading the podcast. I will be doing it. I'll be doing like the first 10 minutes of the interviews that I've done in the past, but the rest will be on a Patreon paywall.
Makes
That's
sense.
the only way I can make money.
Now, so are you, so, I mean,
It's not active.
No, what I want to get to is, we're telling people, if you want to start, just start. Find a way to do it. I know we talk about famous podcasters. One of the most famous out there, which probably not as much as he used to be, Kevin Smith. Smith.
We're going this route, okay.
But I mean, he always says, you got a smartphone, just use your smartphone.
Well,
you can do
actually, segue. Jason Mewes, who also I've interviewed as well.
Oh, okay.
So he was awesome.
Yeah.
So Todd and the Book of Pure Evil, when it wrapped up, it did an animated final season. If you've never seen it, you'll love it. It's Canadian based, but honestly, you can't really tell. But it's hilarious. If you love horror, it's like campy horror, but it's hilarious.
I like campy horror. Like campy.
You'll love this show. If you can find the first 3 seasons, it's live action. And then I think the 4th season is animated. Anyhow, Jason Mewes was at this panel. I got to interview him. He was neighbors with Logan Paul, actually, before Logan Paul decided to become a boxer, whatever he is nowadays. Yeah, whatever. Anyhow, but he was talking about Kevin Smith a lot, as in, you can see the influence Kevin Smith had over Jason's life and how Jason reciprocated it in interviews. And it's just amazing to see. So sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, yeah. But what I'm saying is there's people out there that they want to do something like this, and not just this, but be creative in any way, shape, or form. And that's the biggest thing, is just do it. Find a way to do it and do it. You don't have to go and buy an $800 computer or a $600 microphone or anything like that. There's so much at your fingertips now, and it's never been easier to do it. And a lot of people, they get a little hesitant, not so much because of the equipment. I've found a lot of people I've talked to are, well, what's the point when you have Kevin Smith, a Joe Rogan, a Dax Shepard, Michael Rosenbaum? You have all these actors, all these big names that are pulling all of the listens. There's only so much time in a day for people to listen, and they always sit there and say, what is the point? And again, I'll go back to what I said before, is your passion. That is the big difference. Not going to sit there and say that all of those people I mentioned are not passionate, but if you continuously bring your passion, your excitement, and what you then do is you give something else for the listener to listen to.
You have to. I mean, look, if I was so obsessed with my subscriber count or with, this interview has under 100 views, I'm just going to delete it. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be doing this for what I do.
Oh, it's funny you say that. I've been trying to build my YouTube now for the better part of a year. And I was doing some research the other day, like what's the best way to help grow your channel, this and that. And there are literally people out there saying, delete your bad content. Your content that has 10 views, it has 10 views for a reason. Delete it. Oh, you did this. Mm-hmm. The audio wasn't great. Delete this. And I'm sitting there like, no, because that's my history. That is, you could see the progression in my show. And that's one thing I love. I love when I find a show that I like, I go back and start at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And then I love to hear their growth and their progression up to where they're at now. Why would I get rid of that stuff? Don't get me wrong. I'm going back. I just edited an old episode that I'm planning on re-releasing. It's just audio, but I was listening to it, and it was an hour and 40-minute episode. All right, hour and 40 minutes. I legitimately cut out 25 minutes of ums, uhs, likes, and you knows. 25 minutes. So you take a look at from there to where I'm at now. I'm not saying I don't do that still. I do. I'm human. But I've grown. I know not to do that now.
You're thinking like, it's like, do I have other words I can use besides this? Or I'll take a little longer of a pause and then I can cut that down a lot easier.
Yes.
Things like that. But back to, talking about that stuff, there's a reason why I haven't gone back to my other 1,000 interviews and edited them. And it's because of two things. One, time. And two, some are 2 to 3 hours long. Mm-hmm. I don't have time to do that. Yeah, I can't. I logistically can't. Mm-hmm. I want to clear up awkward questions and long pauses and the ums and the ahs and the you knows and awesomes and whatever else that I tossed in there. I'd love to clean up all of that stuff. I just can't. I just think that it's the progression of an interviewer. The reason why I've changed up my questions over the past couple of years is because I got into a rut. I needed to change it up. So I looked up interview questions online. I'm not afraid to admit it.
Yeah.
So I found some really great interview questions that have now triggered. That's a great question. Oh man, this is a hard question. Give me a second to think about it. Things like that keep me more interested in the person. Hopefully people that are watching and listening to the show, they like that factor as well too. They like the fact that, these people are now talking about themselves a little more candidly. And I think it's awesome to hear more about them than the standard, oh, so you've done this comic. Oh, what else have you done?
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. And we discussed it a little bit, I think, on, there we go, on a Twitter feed, maybe exchange. I don't know where it was. I think we were talking about it somewhere about editing. And
yes, it was Twitter.
Yeah. And I used to be that person who thought, oh, there's so much better content when you don't edit. I legitimately thought that for quite some time because I thought all those little quirks that I had were funny. I'd listen to it and I'd laugh. But then I go back a few years later, I'm like, what was I thinking? That's That's horrible. Why would I do that? And even when somebody like John from Spoiler Country is sitting there saying, stop, edit, don't do that. You don't know what you're talking about. You have no idea. It's one of those things. And for me, it was, I had to learn. I had to learn for myself as I went forward. Oh, that doesn't sound good. I should probably start editing, or I should teach myself how to use those filler words. A half a second longer pause is better than going, and like, that's better.
So, and that's what I do as well too. So this is bad to admit, but for at least 10 years, I didn't edit. It's only the past 3 or 4 years, I think. Yeah, 3 or 4 years that I've started to edit. And the only reason I do that is because either it's a technology issue I'm having, either the video will go screwy, or my audio will cut out, or something like that I know I've checked, but I have to fix. And so when I'm doing all of that stuff, and when I'm looking back, and during an interview, I'll ask a question, and maybe I'll just be too long-winded. And I'll be just like, okay, well, here's actually the question I want to ask. There goes a good minute. There goes 30 seconds that I didn't need. That was just filler. That, unless it's something as a segue to the question, then that's a little different. But you learn these little tips and tricks as you're going on, as you're talking, as you're interviewing people. But you can get a feel for how the interview is going too. So if my interview is an hour, or at least scheduled for an hour, and I can tell that the guest is getting tired or that they're rehashing answers, I can cut it short. Hey, these are really great questions. Let me stop and let me ask my last 4. Let's give them a break. You get a sense of that with the other person, but it also depends on how comfortable they are with you. And so because of those edits, because of the ability to edit, it really does help tighten up a lot of stuff. And so if I'm long-winded with an intro, because I haven't made a custom intro yet, which I really should, I think that it just helps clean up a lot of things. So maybe they've answered a question and they've already answered it again. Hey, as I answered before, or again, it's this, and this. It's like, okay, well, I can cut this out.
Yeah.
It's just, you get a feel for it.
And that's exactly it. If you're wanting to get into it, don't be overwhelmed and afraid of all the technical sides of things. Just get into it, do it, have fun. Again, your passion, your excitement is what's going to drive you. And again, the relationships, in my opinion, and my experience, the relationships that I've made have made this so worth just doing and just having fun. I'm talking to somebody from Canada here that I never would have met any other way than doing this. John from Spoiler Country, he lives in Seattle, across the entire country, the other side of the country. I would never have met him had it not been for this. And we've had some amazing conversations. And I just want people to know, and it's just do it. Have fun. Do it and have fun.
And if you stop having fun, take a break. There's no shame in that whatsoever.
Exactly.
If you're not feeling the energy, if you're not feeling the excitement that you have in talking or whatever your show is about, or whatever your topics are about, then take a break. No one's going to kill you for it.
No.
Like you have to.
Well, at the end of my shows now, I wanted to do kind of a fast 6, actually 6 questions now. I changed it. But a fast 6 questions I'm going to ask you. But I'm going to run through them. Answer them as quick as you want. You don't have to, there's no timer, obviously, but answer them as quick as you can. Some of them are easy, yes or no kind of questions, or this or that kind of questions. And number 1, you kind of answered already, but Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars. Yeah.
DC or Marvel?
Independent creators.
Did Han shoot first?
Yes. That's if anyone says otherwise, they've been watching the edited version by Lucas that he was on LSD at the time.
All right, I can't tell if this is going to be a good question for you because you're from Canada, so I don't even know if you have this up there. But Subway or Quiznos? They're sandwich shops.
So we have Subway, just to let you know.
Okay, good. Look, I've been to Canada once. I've been to Canada once, and I was young. So
here, let me dispel some Canadian myths. We don't live in igloos. We don't ride mooses. We do have the penguin mafia, the polar bear triad, and the polar bear mafia, the penguin triad, and the whatever the moose are.
It sounds wrong, but there are different brands within different countries. Okay, so I don't know.
No fault on you whatsoever. But we do have a lot of really cool. At least down here, we have a lot of ethnic food and a lot of small cultural shops and all that other stuff too. So yes, Subway is perfectly fine.
And then finally, what show or podcast out there do you love that you feel others don't give enough attention to?
Two Geeks Talking.
It's always
I have to. Look, I mean, I could promote other people. I could say, Spoiler Country. I could say Bridging the Geekdom. I could say whatever else. But to be perfectly honest, like, we're here as a collab. We're here talking to each other. We're here promoting this show as well as your own. And I think that the only way you can truly listen and watch to your own, I think that what you can only do is promote yourself. Yes, I listen to other stuff though. I don't get me wrong. Yes, I do listen to other things, but I don't do it on a continuous basis.
And that kind of goes hand in hand with what we're telling people. Don't be afraid to jump in, but also don't be afraid to just get your name out there. Just selflessly promote. Just promote. Ask your friends and family to get on, to follow, to subscribe, to listen. Tell them to wear a T-shirt. Tell them to pass out a sticker. Don't be afraid to do that, because that's the only way that you can grow. And it's fun. I like doing that. We made T-shirts a year ago, and I just started buying them and giving them to my son, giving them just take them, and it's just fun to do. But no, that's kind of the idea behind that question, is to promote yourself.
Sorry, Canadian here, I gotta promote myself. I know it's very difficult for us up here up north there, but it is what it is. And I'm all about the whole promotion of ourselves, as much as I hate doing that. Sorry.
With all that, man, thank you for coming on. There's a lot of other questions I have, but I kind of want you to come back later on and discuss some things later on down the line. We've covered a lot. I hope a lot of people that do watch this kind of understand and get a better understanding of you, of who you are, and the adventure and the journey that you took to get here, and understanding that. And I kind of was framing this episode, I don't know if you realized it, as a kind of how-to and kind of getting into this a little bit. It was one of those things where I was sitting there thinking, I'm talking to somebody who's been doing this for more than a decade. This is a perfect opportunity to highlight, hey, this is a journey that anybody can take if you just have the drive and the excitement and the passion. And I've said that so many times, I know, but it's true. It is true. And I have to say it. But thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you so much. I do appreciate it. I don't know if I answered your questions right. I definitely want to talk more about whatever you have questions on. And maybe I'll have some other guests I can talk about as well too. And
I do look forward to having you on the show again at some point in time. I actually got quite a few interviews lined up with some pretty cool people, so I'm looking forward to doing that. A lot of people, I don't know why, I kind of posted on Twitter that I was going to start doing this, and I had probably 10 messages within the span of 4 or 5 days, hey, I'll be on your show to do it. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know there was a want for this, but okay, let's do it. Let's go. So
honestly, if you can keep doing that, you'll never be short of guests. You'll never be short of content. You'll never be short of entertainment and fun.
Yeah, definitely. But thank you so much for being on, man, and talk to you later.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much, and I hope you have a great day there.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure you follow Kurt over on the Twits. You find him on YouTube and hit subscribe. Find him on the podcatching apps and follow there. It was such a pleasure to talk with him. I hope he enjoyed being on the show with me. I hope he comes back later on. But with all that said, everybody, I will talk at all of you later.